Hello and welcome to this bonus episode of Candid Tiny House. It's a special occasion because one of our DIY builders, Louise Southerden, who you might remember from season 1, episode 4 of Candid Tiny House, has written a book about her journey of building a tiny house on wheels. The book is called Tiny, a memoir about love, letting go, and a very small house. And it tracks the story of Lou's DIY tiny house build in the Northern Rivers area in New South Wales and the love relationship that she was in at the time. Fred and I had the privilege of reading the book earlier this year. And I have to say that what stood out to me was the realness of her accounts of both building as a DIY builder and the honesty that she lets us in on in her relationship as it suffered massively during the tiny house build and eventually led to the relationship breaking down. Now, usually you will see representations of like the happy couple who built the tiny house on wheels, but in this story, you get to hear about what it's like when it doesn't go well for the relationship. It brings with it a whole bunch of sincere and insightful reflection into what it's like to navigate a project when the relationship foundation that you're in is not clear or stable. And when you just have to soldier on anyway because you both believe in the project and you hold so many values in common. In this interview, I asked Lou about what it was like working from her home in her tiny house as she wrote solo in that for 2 years, and what it was like to move her tiny house to a new site because she's just done that recently. And we talked about the new local council regulations for tiny houses in her area, which is Ballina Shire, and about her writing process. So let's hear from Lou now. Well, congratulations, Lou, on writing a book. Is this your first actual book?
No, I've written a couple of other nonfiction titles. One was a surfing guide for girls, and another one was a guide to living and working in Japan. But this is my first narrative nonfiction, and memoir is such a different beast. It's just so different to anything I've written before. And of course, I've been a travel writer for 25 years, so I've been writing for a living for a long time. But this was just really intense, much more emotional than anything, very personal. Yeah, it's rewarding, but it's also just really hard. And it took me 2.5 years to write it.
Mm.
So that's what I've been doing since I finished building Tiny, really.
You went from one huge, personally challenging
Yeah,
job to another hugely personally challenging job of reflecting on that journey. So you've
yeah.
really put yourself through a ringer, haven't
I
you, over
know.
the last 5 years or so?
I know. I often kind of wondered, why am I doing this? But I think it's funny because even during the build, I kind of treated it in a way like a long trip when it was happening, because it was so unfamiliar, and even a new language to understand, and new techniques, and just all the skills. Every day I was learning new things, and I kind of treated it like a trip that I would do, where I was taking notes and taking photos all the time. And so, in a way, writing the book was kind of like writing up a trip for a travel story that, um, I kind of wanted to process it all. And it's almost like I don't really feel like I've experienced something until I've written about it. It's like you get to live it twice in a way, which is wonderful, but also difficult when you're reliving the difficult parts. And there are lots of difficult parts of this build. So it was, yeah, I kind of feel like the build is finally done now in a way, because I've processed everything that happened.
Mm. That totally makes sense that writing is a part of your process of integrating what's happened and coming to terms with it all and then moving on to the next adventure. So it makes sense to me that that would be
Yeah.
part of your process to write about the building of
Yeah.
the house.
And I think the integrating is a really good word for it, because, yeah, you do feel like, a build is so intense and there's so much happening every day. You're on the tools all day, from starting early, like at 7 o'clock or whatever, and you're finishing in the late afternoon. And then I'd be at my desk researching things, finding out what materials, trying to learn about things that I'd never even thought about before, so I could order the materials the next day. So it was just so full on, 6 or 7 days a week for 8 months. And so at the end of it, you do stop, and it kind of just, it's like, stopping a car and the dust catches up with you after on a dirt road.
And at the same time, there was this parallel story, as you said, like the love story that, it sort of is telling two stories at once because they were both happening at the same time, like your journey with your lover and your journey with your house and how they intersected lots of times.
Yeah. I mean, it was just this fluid thing. And I guess I did write the whole thing to process it. But at some point, I don't know, I think there's something about turning an experience into a story. It's not like you're making up anything, but you're giving it a narrative structure. And that was also really integrating and healing, I think, to kind of make sense of something by giving it this narrative arc. And because it had themes of empowerment, starting a project that I didn't know anything about and then learning and growing through that with confidence. And as a woman, especially in not just in the building world, which is fairly male dominated, but in a patriarchal culture that we live in, those themes keep popping up in the book. But also, I guess I wanted to explain how I came to build a tiny house and want to live in one. And it was because of my nomadic travel writing life and how I'd chosen freedom over security for so long. And then I reached my 50s and I'm like, hang on, I don't have anywhere to live and the rents are going up too much and I can't afford to live in Sydney where I'm from. And so I moved to the north coast of New South Wales and it was still expensive. So that was also an interesting exercise to share your personal story and be real and authentic, but also make it readable and I guess what people want is a story with themes that resonate with them so that even though they might not be building a tiny house, they can still recognize themes of, overcoming obstacles and meeting challenges and finding your way through relationship hiccups and those kind of things. So it's
For sure. I mean, I found there was a lot of overcoming obstacles and like personal reflections on, where are my strengths in this? How can I bring that to this new project that I'm undergoing?
yeah,
Lots of self-reflection on, am I missing something? Where can I get the thing that
yeah,
I'm missing?
yeah,
And so I think that these are things that we go through every time we embark on a new journey or new job or new role, like becoming a parent or taking on a new thing in our lives that we genuinely don't
yeah,
know how we're going to do
yeah,
this, and we're finding the tools as we go. So it feels like a really yeah, relevant and applicable to many different
yeah,
situations. But, there's a lot of people who have very specifically the same situation, like taking on a tiny house on wheels build and navigating all of the complexities that that brings.
yeah,
It's hard. There's a lot of practical considerations that we're learning as we go. And often there's partners involved.
yeah,
And geez, if you want dynamics to come up,
yeah.
this is a great opportunity for
That's
that.
right. It's a great crucible. And I guess I've seen so many videos of happy couples building, and obviously people often show, as we all do, the good bits and we skip over the other bits. But I kind of felt like my experience was so different because we didn't end up you know, having a happy build together. It wasn't strengthening our relationship. It went the other way. So I kind of wanted to burst the bubble on that a bit and just show people that actually it's not always happy and smiley and fun and bonding. And I wished that it was for us, but I mean, building is stressful, whether it's a tiny house or it's a grand designs project. I mean, yeah, anyway. And I've also included in the book, as you will have seen, some photos of this, the build itself, the frame, the cladding. So I wanted to include those pictures as a bit of guidance as well.
Yeah, I think that it's a really beautiful reference, partly because they're beautiful pictures, but also like thought you did a really nice job of making technical building facts, presenting them in plain language. So you're not jargoning people, and you're not assuming knowledge so that you wouldn't really get
Yeah.
why that lintel placement was important or whatever. Like you've really delivered it from a true DIY perspective, which is like, I had no idea that this is this. How
Yeah.
about this? Like, and we
Yeah.
we join you as a reader, in
Yeah.
the unveiling of these sort of concepts from a whole different industry that you've never had anything to do with.
Yeah.
So,
All the slang that builders use. And I think that's the advantage of having been a beginner builder, that I can kind of remember, I hadn't been building, if I'd been building for 10 years, it would have been harder to put myself in the mind of a reader who doesn't know anything about building. But I was so, I learned a lot during the build, but I still am a rookie. So I have a power drill and I have a few tools of my own now, but I still am very much a rookie and always seek expert help if I'm doing things. So yeah.
what was it like, Lou, working from home and writing in a tiny space for that long?
It was great, actually. Like I'm really glad that I decided to give myself a dedicated workspace in the tiny. So, and that was one of my prerequisites for the design, that I didn't want to be packing up my books and papers each night to eat dinner. So I was really glad to have that. And I think being in the tiny was really good because all around me are the stories of the build. So every bit of it that I look at, the stairs behind me and that handrail and the planter box and the architraves and shelves and things, I remember everything that happened. They each have some meaning for me. And so if I got stuck, I just have to kind of look around and think, yeah, that was that time when we kind of argued over the handrail and we had that thing about how high should it be. And or we had that beautiful day where we put the architraves up and I learned something new and we really got along well that day. And I was still on my ex-partner's land.
Mm.
So that was tricky because yeah, I guess psychologically that was difficult, but I'm pretty focused, I guess, and there's so many threads and so many bits, and you're just trying to keep a narrative arc and you're trying to remember details and remember to explain things, and just holding a whole book, 80,000 words or whatever in your head and trying to remember what you said, 4 chapters ago. And I couldn't dip in and out of it. And it's like I had to kind of hold it in my head for at least a continuous length of time. So, yeah. And now I've moved the tiny only about 6 weeks
Mm.
ago, which is it's like a whole new chapter now. And then I've spent the last month or so just doing the setup here, making sure everything's. I had to rebuild the deck and put in some paving stones and do some home maintenance that I'd postponed because I was finishing the book and I knew I was going to move. So I just feel like I've still been only in the last week or so just had it kind of like, okay.
You've arrived, you can
I'm
stop.
arrived and I'm here.
Tell me about finding a new site.
Yeah.
What was that like? How did you do it? How did you find it?
Yeah, it was difficult. I guess I resisted doing it for a long time because I just thought it would be difficult. And I guess you're putting yourself out there. And I'd been in, I guess I'd delayed moving in a way as long as I could because where I was on my ex's land, everyone around was really supportive. I knew no neighbors were going to complain. It was inside of the road, but people were fine with it. I'd lived there for a couple of years, or 3 years really. So even while we were building, it was there. So I just felt kind of safe there. But I knew I had to move. It was time to move on, and I did all the usual things a lot of people do. I put up Facebook posts. I made a flyer with pictures of the tiny and what I needed and what I was prepared to pay and a bit about me and those kind of things. Did letterbox drops around the area. In my area, there's on the outskirts of town. There's it's kind of semi-rural and there's lots of big blocks but I'm not off grid, so that was. I guess that would make it a lot easier if you're off grid and you have your own water and power supply. That means you don't have to be near a dwelling. So that would have been easier. And yeah, I guess just trying to find the right fit with people and making sure maybe the neighbors would be on side. That's the biggest fear, I suppose. Even though in New South Wales, I think it's a little bit easier maybe to live in a tiny in general with state legislation. But, if people complain to council, that's, all bets are off. You don't know what's going to happen then, and council often has to do something about it. But our local council here did a couple of months ago, just in their housing strategy for the next 20 years, they decided to encourage permanent living in tiny houses,
Wow.
which was really great. So they've got that overarching approach and philosophy or principle. So they haven't got direct policies yet, like Mount Alexander Shire where you are, but yeah, it's coming.
That's a good
So
step
that's
forward.
hopeful.
That's like a good, you can appeal to their principles that it aligns with their strategy
Yes.
if it comes up. Yeah.
And all I've heard, yeah, exactly. And all I've heard from people who work in council as staff and also councillors I've spoken to are really positive about it. So I guess in the end, I found a site where I'd just by chance dropped a leaflet, a flyer in the letterbox of someone I knew, not knowing that they lived there. And they said, "Oh, come and have a look at our land." And when I saw it, I was like, "Wow, I didn't even know there was this block at the end of this street. Um, didn't even know this existed." So yeah, I guess it was just, you do all you can, and then you trust that things will work out, I suppose. And I did do also like I guess it's kind of like a vision board, if you call it that, where I put pictures of things that I wanted in my new site. A friend of mine kind of encouraged me to do that, and I thought, oh yeah. But it was really good as an exercise for just shifting my mindset out of a bit of fear and trepidation to actually this new site could be really beautiful, and it could be really green, and there could be lovely people, and there might be some wildlife around, and it'll hopefully be close to the beach. And in the end, I kind of got most of the things I kind of on my wish list. I also wrote out all the things, like I just did a little, like an exercise, like I just wrote my ideal site. What is my ideal site like, as if I'm already living there, and kind of,
Mm.
I've heard that if you put it in present tense, it kind of, yeah, shifts things in your mind. And yeah, so I kind of did a few of those things. I do live in the Northern Rivers of New South Wales after all. So
So that,
yeah.
it's
Um,
supported to do that kind of thing and to talk about it, which
yeah,
is nice
that's right.
because I do that
Yeah.
sort of thing too, but I just don't talk about it because I live in Castlemaine and we talk
Yeah.
about permaculture mostly. So
And I think also I just spread the word. Like I talked to my local postie and the beekeeper who takes his bees to different properties to, native bees to pollinate some of the macadamia crops here and things. So, because people who live on rural properties, and they might know that their neighbor is interested in putting a tiny house on there. So I kind of just tried to, that's what you've got to do. You just got to put yourself out there a little bit and just tell people about what you're looking for. And everyone I spoke to was really positive and really helpful, even if they couldn't help if they didn't have a spot for my tiny, they were just super supportive and rang around. And so yeah, I think just you have to kind of just do a bit of a sales pitch, I guess, but also you just have to be real and be honest. And so I guess, yeah, the advantages are, of course, that, I have a compost toilet, so I don't need to be plugged into sewage, but I did have to plug into power and water. And so when I did find this site, there was a bit of setup here, and I had to get a gravel pad put down. So because it was a grassy site, so it couldn't just be on grass. And then I had to get a ditch dug for the power and water connection to the house,
Mm.
which is it's about 50 meters away. So it was, and then it had to have a thicker cable because of that distance, the electricity cable. So that was extra cost. So I think the setup cost almost $5,000 even without the towing. So that was a lot more than I was thinking it was going to cost. And the towing cost about $1,300. So I was towed by a tractor. Anyone who's seen my No Impact Girl Facebook page would have seen a video of the tractor pulling the tiny house, which was a really momentous thing because the tiny hadn't moved since I'd built it, and it just did exactly what it was designed to do. The trailer performed beautifully. The tiny house and the building method, just everything worked. No, none of the windows shattered, none of the walls split. Really everything actually went really smoothly. But yeah, the cost of moving I didn't move very far from where it was, but the main cost was transporting the tractor from a nearby town on the back of a truck. So the towing guy had to rent the truck for 4 hours or so and to bring the tractor here and then to do the move and then to take the tractor back because he couldn't put the tractor on the highway to get to the town where it lives. So yeah, all up it was almost $6,500
Wow.
probably to do the move, which is kind of more than you think for a small dwelling. But it all, yeah, the move went beautifully. Everyone was, I had a really good electrician as well. And the towing guy also did the setup, which I would highly recommend to anyone if they do get someone to tow the Tiny. And I know a lot of those massive four-wheel drives, like the Dodge Rams, can tow a 4.5 ton Tiny now.
Only if they've got a GVM upgrade.
Ah, okay, good. Didn't know that.
Just, yeah, yeah. It's only specific ones. Yeah, it's not just any RAM. It's going to be a bit
Right,
GVM.
right.
Yeah.
No, okay.
Mm.
And obviously they've got to have the 70 mil tow haul as well, tow hitch. Um, the advantage of the tractor was that it could raise and lower the hitch. So I had to come down, not a steep drive, but there was a slope. And so when the tractor was pulling the tiny house out, I had a friend walking behind the Tiny and I was in front giving instructions to the tractor driver. When the Tiny looked like it was going to scrape at the back when it was coming down the drive, that we signaled to the driver and he just kind of lowered the hitch so the back of the Tiny kind of came up. And
Wow.
so that he said that was the big advantage of using him and with the tractor rather than a vehicle which can't change its hitch height. So that was quite good. And also the tractor was not going to get bogged on the grass when it came into the site. And it was great having the tractor driver. He's a civil works guy, and I can give you, I mean, for anyone up here, I can give you his details to put in the link
Yeah.
below this. But he did the gravel pad, he did the excavating for the ditch for the power and water. And I think having someone who can do the setup and then the towing, because he's doing the towing, he knows what he needs to get the vehicle onto the gravel pad. So he knew exactly what was needed instead of getting someone else. Or I was even thinking, oh, I'll just get some gravel and spread it around and stuff. But I'm so glad I didn't do that because it wouldn't have worked. And yeah, he knew exactly the kind of gravel because there's so many different kinds. Um, and what's going to be a solid base under your Tiny because concrete is just way too expensive and also permanent. So
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see how having somebody who holds the whole vision of like the transport, the entry, the exit, the
yeah,
where it's going to be, how it's going to be orientated, somebody who holds all of that and is managing the whole job is ideal, so it's not siloed and people aren't going like, oh yeah, but surely it's orientated that way. It's like, no, I can't get out if I orient.
he came early, he came and did a recce and we figured out which branches we had to trim to get the Tiny in. And it was just, as you say, very holistic. So that was good.
Mm.
So the move, and it was kind of surreal, I was lying in bed the night before the move and just thinking, this is weird. Tomorrow night I'm going to be lying in my same bed, in my same house, but I'm going to be in a completely different place.
That is weird.
And so when like it's weird to move house by actually moving your house.
It's really weird.
And then I woke up the next morning, but it was totally different because the light's different. My Tiny is oriented in a different direction now. So the sun comes in from a different angle. Yeah, it is very different. It almost feels like a different tiny house in a way. So
I just want to thank you for being
yeah.
so honest and so generous with your process because, I
Oh,
mean, for me, Candid Tiny House,
thank
it's
you.
really like hits it the nail on the head, to use a
Yeah.
silly
Yeah.
metaphor. But,
It's perfect.
it's
Perfect.
perfect because I don't like it when people gloss over the hard bits. I want people to be
Yeah.
able to go in with their eyes open and reading
Yeah.
your book and, hearing about real life stories like this. I think it really enriches people and helps them gather in the resources that they're going to need and get the supports in and to be gentle with themselves when things don't go well or don't go
Yeah.
exactly as planned or on time or whatever, because that's just it. You're just doing the process and then they'll have a story to tell too. But I think that we can
Yeah.
arm each other with honest depictions and sensitive approaches to, the very real emotional journey that happens concurrently.
Mm.
with the
Mm.
build. Yeah, so thank you so much.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that's as you say, everyone probably goes through some emotional journey, and I just happen to be someone who's intensely interested in psychological processes, and I'm just naturally introspective and introverted. So that's my story. Yeah, I think it does help to be real and just say how it is, because I think in the tiny house world there is a lot of that gloss and glamour. And I guess, I mean, I love that you guys are selling trailers and doing the workshops as you've always done, because it started off being a DIY movement, and it's probably less, much less now a DIY movement, isn't it? I mean, most people seem to get their tiny houses built by tiny house builders, and but the DIY thing is still so rewarding. And so, I just, even though it was hard, I just would encourage anyone who's got the chance to do a DIY tiny house build to do it. If you have a site, if you have people who know what they're doing, who can help you, and tools, and if it comes together and you get the chance, just take it, because it's just so rewarding to design and build your own home. And as Fred has said as well in his workshops, that's something that we don't really get a chance to do in modern life, in the modern world. Mostly that's taken out of our hands by builders. And yeah, tiny houses give that back to us. So yeah, we're very lucky.
Yeah, we are. In generations gone by, many people would have had that opportunity. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Lou, and good luck with the book
Oh,
launch.
thanks. Thank you.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.
Okay, that's it. That's hearing from Lou about her beautiful new book. It's out on the 30th of July in 2024 through Hardy Grant Publishers, and it's called A Memoir About Love, Letting Go, and a Very Small House. For all the details on her actual tiny house build and for all the honest accounts of her relationship journey, you'll have to read the book. You can also listen back to her original interview with me on Candid Tiny House, which is in season 1, episode 4, for insights about her design process and about learning how to build a whole house, having just learnt how to use power tools at a local carpentry course. It's a hugely relatable book, beautifully written and well worth the read. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about Lou's process, and I hope you feel inspired to pick up the tools yourself. Check out our website at fredstinyhouses.com.au/education to find out about our upcoming workshops and the online course, and both of which were Lou's starting points actually for her successful tiny house build. Stay candid.